So Luis, your line is open.
Hello.
Hey, I've got your questions, and I combined the two emails into one thing. All right, you have a deadline. All right, so let's see if we can help you out. You want to add images to surfaces. You have a PDF here. We'll download that. Then we have the PLN file. We'll download that. Here are the images to the first email. So that's some images. All right, so you want to add images to a morph. So we've got that file we'll open up, and you want to have some art glass and a reverse image on the opposite surface. And you want to add images to library parts any different than morphs, such as specific tiles and wood colored textures. Okay, so images. And let's go, and here's some art glass, okay, and so a couple of different examples here, well, several different ones. Okay, all right, so let's, let me just save image as, so let's put this into downloads here, and Luis image 1, and here we'll save this one, and save image as image 2, and save this one as image 3. All right. Now, obviously, these images here are in context shots, and they would need some processing to basically make the texture. So we may do a little example of that, but let's go into your file. So your file, I go in here and we open your Partition Study here. And I won't save the changes I did to the appliance one. Tell us a little bit about the project that you're putting this glass into.
It's a renovation with entry to a church, and they're taking those art pieces, those art glass pieces out and positioning somewhere else as a screen in another part of the project.
Okay. All right, so if I select this is an object here. So it's an object rather than a window or a door. Okay. Now when I select it as a whole, as an object, I can see you know, that it's just got a 3D appearance here. We don't have any settings that relate to the materials or the surfaces. There's only an override one here. So how did this object get created?
It was just modeled quickly in SketchUp and then brought into ArchiCAD.
All right. So it's a SketchUp originally geometry, and you just brought it in as an object. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when you bring it in from SketchUp, it does internally have some recognition of what the surfaces are. So that's why we have, you know, sort of a wood frame, and we have the glass. But we don't have direct access to change those, what materials or surfaces are there. So what we need to do, and I'm just going to go and copy this. I'll just drag a copy down. Whoops. So drag here and do press and release. That's interesting. Option. There we go. Okay. It's hitting the Option key. So now this, if I go to 3D, we're going to have two of them, and I'll take this one and I'm going to turn it into a morph. So convert it to a morph. So when I convert it to a morph, we'll have access to all of the individual surfaces here. So the one behind it is an object. This one here is a bunch of morphs. So it actually broke it up into separate little pieces that, you know, at least make some sense. Like this is a post, this is a horizontal piece. So, you know, so there's some things here. All right, so let's look at this this particular morph piece, and in fact, let me just drag a copy of it out. So I'll just drag a copy of this out a bit, so I can work with it individually, and then once I get something interesting, I can apply it there. So this morph, if I select it, it says that it's made of wood, pressure treated. That's really what it's made of. If you were to stick it into a wall, it would give way based on wood, but its surface here is something that it says from converted object. So it has a particular sort of arbitrary name because it was converted. We could select that and say that we want to go to the this would be under surfaces, and here it has that open, so we can see that it's sort of a transparent thing. It has no hatching because whatever it was trying to link to is missing. We can also just do airspace, so it has no hatching. But this would be what you'd see in a 3D view if you wanted to do something like, some sort of a hatch and dash sort of thing to indicate potentially some glass or whatever. Then that could potentially show up, but that would only show up in vectorial hatching in an elevation, or if you change your 3D window view. So let's turn that off because that's not going to help us. The texture is what we would be interested in, and we could say, let me just search, and we'll just take a standard library here. Now you have some, we'll just go in here. I guess there is an option to search. No, let's see, that's the preview. Let's just pick a fabric just to say something that would at least say, all right, I've got this. You can see I've picked an arbitrary image. We can see that the preview is now changed here, and if I go to OK, then you can see that all of the ones that reference that here use it. Now it's interesting that the object didn't, but the morph did. So the object sort of had it baked in, but when I turned it into a morph, it became accessible, and you can see the difference here. All right, so that's one thing that we can do is we can create a surface and apply it. Now one of the things about surfaces is that the placement of it is a bit arbitrary. So if I zoom in on this, and let's say I take this and I elevate it, so I'm just going to drag it up in space. So I'll say I want to move it up in space just a little bit here. Now when I do this, look at what happens to the little sort of detail at the bottom. There happens to be this thing right at the bottom here, and when I move this up, that came up with it. Let's see if I undo that. So it basically, as I move the element up, the mapping sort of stayed constant. In some cases, depending upon how this is applied, we might have seen it sort of cut off the bottom here. But what I'm going to do is just show that we can also go to the it's now in the document menu, creative imaging, align 3D texture. This used to be under the design menu, and it had to do with align 3D texture, but now it's been put into the document menu. We can say set origin, and I'm just going to click anywhere on the surface, and you'll see when I clicked, it moved the origin around. Now, so this is good if you, in some cases, if you want to have boards or bricks or other things start at a certain point, you can change it. But for something like what we're talking about here, where you want to have one image, just go, starting at one corner, it may or may not be workable. Let's see if we can get an image and use it. So we'll go and let's go to where we open up the image. Are you following me so far, by the way?
Yes, excuse me. I did want to mention that that particular object that was created in SketchUp, it's like a 1/4-inch thick piece of glass. So if you were to zoom into it, the texture was applied. Is it to all 6 surfaces?
Mm-hmm. Was it applied to all 6 surfaces? I'm not sure. So it might have been, and of course the parts that are on the edges wouldn't be seen, but it would certainly be applied to front and back.
Okay.
All right, now this one is the easiest to work with because we are looking straight on, and that's going to be the ideal for any type of work with textures. If it's not straight on, then you'll need to sort of distort it. Just, you know, it's going to be in perspective, and you're going to have to make it look like it was a straight on image. But in this case, what I can do is I can start out with a simple cropping. So let me just go and create a marquee here. Now I'm using Photoshop. You can use other tools, including some free online ones, to do something similar. Sometimes these things can be very tricky, and sometimes they can be straightforward. What you may notice here, and if I zoom in a little bit, is that it's really not quite square. So my cropping is not going to be a perfect representation. Now, rather than get bogged down into how we could get the whole thing, I'm just going to first of all do a simple version, which is just what's in this rectangular space. So we'll lose a little bit of the corner here. And I'm going to go to the image and say crop it here. And now you can see the image show up with essentially just something that could be on some glass. It's just missing, it's just slightly distorted and missing the right corner. Now I'm going to go ahead and save this. I'll save this as a copy. So I'll say Luis image 1 cropped here. And so I've now saved that excerpted image there. Now let's go back to ArchiCAD. And we're going to go, first of all, to the surfaces again here. And I'll go to this texture and I'll say, instead of using this one, I'm going to search for another one. And I'll go load in another picture from a file here. And so we'll go to downloads. And here's the cropped image. And I'll say, OK, open it. And you can see here it is. I'll say, all right, yeah, that looks fine. Now, you notice that it looks totally distorted because I need to make it have the original proportion. And then I need to decide, either by measurement or something else, what is the size of it. I don't think it's 15 feet. I'm going to guess that 7 feet might be a reasonable starting point. So we'll see how that works. But I've now defined that if it's placed on an object, it's going to have you can see how it's starting to look sort of interesting in this preview, and maybe I'll make it a little less transparent. I'll make it see-through, but only 23% of the light will go through as opposed to 70%. So then it'll be more opaque. So we'll say OK. Look at that.
Oh.
All right. Now, for a quick work, given the type of stained glass, you could work with it, but clearly you can see that the human figure sort of is cut halfway here. So I'm going to take this one as an example and go back to that same document, creative imaging, align 3D texture, set origin. And I'm going to click on the bottom corner, and you can see now it looks like, the left side is correct. Now notice that it starts over again here.
Yeah, it's tiling.
Okay, so I need to change the proportions of it. So I go to the options. Well, actually, let me just measure. If I do an M key and I click on these 2 points, it says it's 8'3" and 15/16. So I'm going to just call it 8'4" here. So I'll go into the surfaces and again go in here. By the way, I'm going to change this name here. I'll just rename it, and we'll call it. I'll just give it an asterisk so it floats to the beginning of the alphabetical list, and then I'll call it glass 1, or stained glass 1 or something like that. So, so I've got stained glass 1, and we said it was 8'4" here, and slight change here. We don't see the preview change, but when I say OK, you'll see now it fits in nicely. Now this one the corner is correct. Obviously, for this one, I'd have to do the same thing. I'd go to the Align 3D Texture, Set Origin, and I'd go to the corner point, and you can see how that works. So pretty darn quickly, we've got this working in there. We'd repeat that for these other ones. So I don't think that I can do it with this one. Let's just see if I go to Document, Creative Imaging, Set Origin here, and try to click on that. Yeah, it didn't work because we don't have that surface defined. So turning it into a morph gives us access to individual pieces, and then obviously I imported that graphic, put the origin point at the right location, and it looks pretty good. If I rotate this around, you can see how it's somewhat transparent, but definitely visible. So adjust the transmittance. How's that for you?
That's great. It's workable. The Parish could recognize the image, and it doesn't need to be that detailed. So that'll work great.
Okay. Now, if we go back to the other images here, and so if we go to image 2 here, all right. Well, a little blurry, when you took the picture. What we'd need to do is to actually clean it up, and I'm just going to do a quick and dirty version just so you see what's possible. You may not be able to follow this, but then again you may go, oh yeah, that looks easy enough. So here's what I'll do. I'm going to open it up in Photoshop. So just open it up in Photoshop rather than my quick preview. Here's the other one. Now instead of using a rectangular marquee to crop this, I'm going to use a polygonal lasso. So in Photoshop, you can use a lasso that you can just draw freehand, or you can say I want to click on a series of points in a polygon. And so I'll just go up here, and for training purposes, I'll just do this very quickly. I won't zoom in, but if I were doing this, if I really cared, I might zoom in to try to get the exact pixels. Now I just double-clicked on the last point, and now you can see we've got this sort of wedge-shaped piece. And what I'm going to do is now say that I'd like to take the selection and, let's see, we want to transform the selection here. Now there's different ones. There's distort and transform. I think the transform, if I pull this out, let's see, that's not, okay, no, I'm going to hit escape. It's not transform, we have to do one that's modify, let's see, no, okay, it's actually the edit. This select has to do with what's selected on screen, just the boundary, whereas the edit says I want to transform somehow the contents of that. So I'm going to go here and I'll say warp it here, and we'll just move this out. Well, actually, no, that's going to do things with curves. So let me just forget that. I think probably the one I want is distort, or maybe let's try skew here. If I do skew, yeah, all right, that looks like it's no. All right, skew would be only straight. I can't pull this up or down, so that's not it. Final choice here would be distort, which I think just allows me to do a freeform thing. So I can pull this up. You notice how it starts to look like it's in perspective a different way, as I do that. So you'd pull it out, till it sort of looked good. Now, one of my tricks that I do is I'll actually move the boundary of my viewing window to be close, so then I can actually sort of see how close to square what I'm doing is. So I'll pull this out to here, and you can see that as I pull that in, this is pretty much vertical there. This one is pretty horizontal, and let's just say that that's close enough. Maybe this should go out a little bit to the left. So I'm distorting the image to try to make it as rectangular as possible, and maybe I need to just pull this down a hair. So let's just say that that's close enough. I then double-click within it, and it's going to essentially take what was inside it and sort of firmly place it with the new proportions. And now I can go and say that's probably pretty close to a rectangle. I'll go and crop this in here, you know, close enough. There, go to the image, crop, and then I'll do the same, you know, process. I'll just save this as image 2 dash cropped here, and then we could go and apply it to a surface. So that's the basic idea, is that you're going to isolate the texture, possibly having to distort it, you know, in terms of make it look square again. Sometimes, you know, like obviously this thing in the lower left corner, there's a little bit of sort of something that was in the way, and you may have to actually patch that up, otherwise it's going to look funny. But this looks close enough for what you're talking about. So there you go.
Okay. Now the other glazing that has the same image, how do I separate and bring in the second image? Do I have to change the glass so it's another item, so it doesn't adopt the same character? Each one of those glass panels is a different.
Yeah, so what I go is here is surfaces, and I'll say take this one, and I'm going to create a new one that's a duplicate, and we'll just call it stained glass 2 here. But it'll start out being the same.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll go to the search here. We'll go load another picture. We'll load this one from the image 2 here. And you can see here it is now. We're going to keep the original proportion. And let's just say that it's going to be 8'4" in height. Now that one looked, in terms of the one in Photoshop, it looked wider, didn't look as narrow, so it might possibly, we might need to turn off the original proportion and correct it, you know, so that it would look, I could say it's only 2 foot wide, but let's just leave it at here and we'll say OK. So this is stained glass 2, and now I go to this one and say that I'd like to use the stained glass 2. And there we go. Go and do the set the origin to the bottom left corner, and there we have it.
All right. And if the image was rotated around, let's say if we panned around to the opposite side, are we going to get the back side?
All right. So he's leaning to the left here, and he's leaning to the right there. So ArchiCAD is actually pretty darn smart that way.
Great. I was concerned having depth to that glazing that it would like wrap the texture around all the surfaces and not give me the correct image. So this is great.
Apparently it's acting the way in an intuitive fashion, and I'm not sure what the rules are with that, but by setting the origin, it certainly worked on both faces. So, all right. So let's just see if you had any other questions that you put into your thing here. All right. So adding surfaces, and then you had this question, creating semi-transparent surface. And reverse image, we didn't have to worry about that. Adding images to library parts, any different than morphs such as specific tiles and wood color textures. So what do you mean by that?
So let's say if I wanted that frame to be a different wood texture, different color, how would I be able to apply something else? Let's say it's a light oak or something.
So
that's not in the library.
This morph here, having broken it up into the morph, it's got several pieces. Obviously, we have the glass. This one here is got let's see, where is our surface here? Surface here. So it's wood cherry original from converted objects. So there's that. Let's just change it to, you know, wood oak light horizontal. Let's just see what happens. Okay, so you can see that it has now changed that one. Obviously, we'd need to change this one as well to similar. So you can create your own one here. So I just did it wood, oak, and so we might want to do, what did I say, oak light. Let's do vertical here. So now, at least in theory, this should the grain should work reasonably. So you do have some flexibility.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe just like the art class. Let's say I found a texture of a piece of wood online or something, and I wanted to apply that specific texture outside of the library. Would I do something similar to the art class? I would create a new surface material, import that image, properly scale it, and then apply it.
That's correct. Now, one of the issues with a texture that you're going to apply to a broad surface is that when it repeats, it's likely to show tile marks. So in other words, you have a picture of some wood, and you sort of cut a rectangular piece, whether it's long or just sort of a simple rectangle, and then you say use this as a texture when the left side of the image starts over again, much like when we saw the glass start again, not quite at the top. You're going to see a line. So there are some tricks in Photoshop to essentially mask that line. You have to go in and sort of rework the edges so that it looks like it's continuing nicely from one repetition to the next. So that's a little beyond the scope of the coaching session, although if you sent me an image of something that was like that, in other words, hey, here's a snapshot of some decorative wood, can we make a texture out of it? I could probably show that pretty quickly. I just don't want to try to grab a piece and out of the blue. Do you happen to have a picture of something that you would use for that?
No, it's just kind of like the next step. Right now, this is working out great for the purposes of the meeting that's coming up, but I think the next step would be just to refine it and render it.
Okay, well, great. So I see a comment from Steve saying, nice demo. This kind of thing keeps one up late at night. Thank you, Steve. And Ken Andrews, you say, if you set an elevation of that object, what happens to the image? It won't be shown there. So let's just go in and let's just go to, I don't know if we have any images, elevations here. If I do south elevation. So no image there. Now, interesting, you do see that the one that I replaced with the oak is clean, whereas this morph, has the line work because of the particular surface that it's using. If I go in here and I say, let's not use the wood cherry original, but let's use wood, oak light horizontal, you can see that goes away. And if I go back to 3D, we're going to see that I've now cleaned up that one. So obviously what we saw in the elevation and what we saw in the 3D are coordinated, but things that are imported may or may not have the right stuff in it. Now, if you wanted to have some line work of this, or if you wanted to have an image, here's something we could do. Let's just go to that elevation. Now, let me just open up your line, Ken, because I love these sort of questions to say, how would you go a little further? Ken, I've opened up your line.
Hey, Eric.
Hey.
Belated happy birthday.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that. I did get your email, and I appreciate it. I haven't responded to everybody.
That's all right. No problem. I've been working with trying to do signs and importing. I mean, this has really helped what you just have done over the last 40 minutes or so. But when I look at, I brought the texture in also from SketchUp, and everything looks fine in 3D, but when I go to show the elevations of the building and where these signs I put on the building, all I see is a hatch, just like what you just saw in that frame.
Okay, so here's one thing that we can do. We can use the figure tool or the external drawing tool. If I click with the figure tool, let's see. Figure tool, click. Why isn't it? Maybe I have to go in and set it right. Figure default settings. I'm going to open an image. So the figure tool is something that dates back to ArchiCAD's origins. It's not used very much anymore. But let's just say I want to take this image and say open it. You can see here's the image.
Okay.
And it says keep proportions, probably a good idea. Here's some sizes. Oh well, actually the height of this we figured was 8 feet 4, right? So it says, all right, well if it's 8 feet 4, then it's going to be 1 foot 8 horizontally here. And I'm just going to say that I'd like to work with it, and I'll just click, and you can see that the point that I clicked on was the center, but it has handles here, and so I can drag this into position there. Now, if I don't think I can stretch it here, but what I can do is if I change it from keep proportions, then let's see if we can stretch. No, it's still not letting me do that. I can go in and probably type in a new value, like instead of 1 foot 8, let's just change it to 2 feet and see what happens. Yeah, now so with just a little bit of finagling, that's a technical term, by the way, finagle. You know.
Yeah.
All right. So what is this? This is an elevation with extra graphic image placed on there. So if you want to do a rendered elevation, you have two different things you can do. You can go to the elevation settings and change the model display to show the uncut elements primarily, instead of with a uniform pen color, to show it with their own surface color shaded. You can also turn on 3D hatching, which we were seeing, those funny little lines there.
Yeah.
But this is the key one. Here I say OK, and you'll see now it's showing, well, it's starting to show in color. Now that graphic here, that figure, I can go and say that I'd like to change its display order to bring it to the front. And so then you can have a combination of the automatic, ArchiCAD coloring with some selective signage or, textures like this.
Or an image. Okay.
Yeah.
That makes sense. Boy, I screwed around with that for about an hour and a half, and I'm like, forget it.
Great.
Trying to finish a job, so.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's just bring in. I'll just bring in from the figure tool the other one here. So we'll go in and open this image 2 cropped here, and I'll again say that the height is going to be 8 feet 4, and we'll take this. I'll turn off the proportions and take it to 2 feet, since that's probably about what we need here, and I'll say OK. I'll just drop it in on the side here, and then I'm going to do two things. I'm going to bring it up to the front, and then of course I'll just drag it into position here, and it looks like maybe 2 feet is a little bit too wide, so I need to make it 1 foot 11 or something like that. So
yeah, looks good. Yeah.
All right.
Wow.
So and just so for the finishing one, I'm just going to drag a copy of this over there. So now we have something. Let's say I was fitting in window. Now I want to go in and just. There we go. All right. So Luis, you're welcome. I see you wrote thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
That's
that
great.
really helps.
Awesome, awesome. So, yeah, this is definitely shows that with the right photographic images, you can sort of dress up your file, whether it's something artistic like the stained glass or signage, and make the renovation, make the your clients understand it, because they'll just see things that they recognize, and even if they're not perfect, they'll go, oh yeah, I know that piece of glass.
Sure.
So, perfect. All right, so is it okay to move on?
Yes, appreciate it. Thank you. Any chance I can get that emailed to me?
You want me to send you the file back?
Yes, if that's possible. I'm going to try to work on the other sheet, the other piece of glass.
Absolutely. So let me just save this here, and we'll just quit out of ArchiCAD here. So that file is open, and let me just go to here, and I'll just respond back. So.
Thank you. I also noticed in plan it actually showed the glazing pieces and the jambs correctly as opposed to the initial SketchUp object.
Excellent. Let's see. Here's the file after I rework. Attached. All right. Okay. So let's go attach the file. And this is in my downloads and partition studies. So this is my 15.2 megabytes, and it says 15 is the maximum here. So I'm going to have to zip it. Let's see if it works. Otherwise, I'll have to put it into Dropbox, and then I can send it that way. So let's just go and compress it. All right, 12.4 megabytes. That'll work. All right. So thanks, Luis, for giving me something interesting to work on.
You're welcome. Thanks for your help. I appreciate the guidance.
All right. Take care.